Today, we're going to address solving America's debt crisis. The first step in solving a problem is acknowledging that the problem exists. Masking the actual economic situation by what I would consider an accounting gimmick is established practice throughout the global economy. Gross domestic product numbers, GDP, are often used as a reflection of the overall health of an economy. They give us an indication of the total number of goods and services exchanged in an economy over a given period. Many people rely on those numbers for making decisions in both public and private sectors. So let me ask you this. If your $25 trillion economy grew by 3% or $750 billion, but your government deficit spent $1 trillion, did your economy actually grow? I would say by any honest measure, it did not. How does an economy that is borrowing from the future to spend now claim that as growth? It is not real growth, and therefore the manipulation of those numbers allows the unhealthy policy of excessive debt spending to continue for years on end. Weak economies that are stealing from their children and grandchildren are allowed to posture as growing economies. The United States is not the only one who is guilty of this. If we're looking for clarity and accuracy, which one would need to make intelligent policy decisions, we should have a more honest method of accounting for the actual growth of an economy. GDP should still be measured in the same way, but then subtract the total deficit spending to realize the actual growth. This would not be difficult, but politically it would mean accountability for what is actually going on. The people who control our government and the media are the beneficiaries of most of this deficit spending. Why do you think they contribute millions to these campaigns? They do not want an accurate accounting of what is going on for the people to actually judge the puppets they install to enrich themselves beyond the comprehension of your average working class people. This, of course, doesn't solve the problem we're in, but you have to set the stage for an honest conversation of what is actually going on. Much of the theft from you, the taxpayer, and the next couple generations has been accomplished through much deception and spin. I will not go into the blame game here as we are facing the greatest crisis America has ever faced. We need to start solving this problem now. Arguing the politics takes focus off what I'm trying to convey, but there is much blame to go around, and that will be something people write books about in the future as the crisis is here. There is no getting out of it. Let me give you some numbers of what I am talking about so we can proceed. Next year, 2024, the Congressional Budget Office forecasts that interest payments on our debt balloons to $750 billion. They forecast over the next 10 years, interest on our debt will cost you, the taxpayer, $10.6 trillion. So, for those of you who don't understand, nobody in the world pays what we pay for our military. Fiscal year 2024 Defense Appropriations Act provides $832 billion in funding. Each year going forward, over the next 10 years, we will average about 127% of military spending will be what we pay on interest on our debt. This is a market-shattering event. Why isn't the media or politicians raising alarms about this? You hear some big shots on Wall Street making vague warnings about a crash coming, but nobody's talking specifics. Why? Two reasons. First, the big boys make money off high interest, and this is why our payments on the debt are exploding. So while they all know the interest rate hikes for the country are a disaster, they are personally making fortunes off it. Reason number two is they don't have a solution. It's actually already a done deal. Even if you slash rates, the bonds are already sold. Thus, it would only impact the bonds going forward. Our goose is cooked. The question isn't, are we headed for a disaster, but rather, how do we mitigate it? What I am offering is not going to change the fact that there must be harsh consequences for horrible policy decisions. The only thing I can offer is how to start working our way back to solvency. That is where we are at. I could expand in 1,000 ways on what I'm going to say, but brevity is the soul of wit. Because we live in a society where people need to comprehend the problem and solution, best to make it as clear and simple as possible. Otherwise, nobody would ever even look at it, even if I'm 100% correct on everything that I'm saying. Step one is obvious: cut the interest rates dramatically. There are other ways to tame inflation. We are a debtor nation. Every 1% interest rate hike is $300 billion per year out of the taxpayer's pocket. Furthermore, poor people are hurt the most by higher taxes or higher interest rates. So the policy of higher interest targets poor people to the benefit of rich people. The next two steps are a little trickier because of politics. However, here we need to raise revenue. Currently, there is no state income tax on treasuries. Because this makes a treasury an attractive investment, I think we could get away with adding a 10% tax on the interest accrued off treasuries. So if we are paying out $1.06 trillion a year in interest over the next decade, that claws back $106 billion a year. We also would have to add a 1% national sales tax. All proceeds would go to pay interest on the debt. So the GDP projection for 2024 is 27 trillion. If we could get 1% of that, we would claw back another $270 billion. So those two things give us $376 billion a year, or $3.76 trillion over the next decade. But that's not enough. For the politics to work on these tax hikes, there must be a balanced budget amendment tied to the bill. It would read that only in a national emergency or time of war can the government deficit spend. That if either is declared, an additional tax will be raised for the duration of the war or emergency to cover the cost. Otherwise, the new money raised will just continue to be wasted and stolen by our crooked political class. Now, one of the benefits of the sales tax and decreased government spending will be a decrease in demand, which will tame the tiger of inflation. Inflation will be a done deal. The real question is, how did we become a society of freeloaders? How do you morally gut your nation's economic future with all this debt to make the acts that I have mentioned necessary? Why are they necessary? We have a completely irresponsible government. This is a path forward. A solution is possible. I doubt they will listen, and we are about to see a horrible thing: the destruction of a society from within. No foreign power was ever going to defeat America, but the greed and stupidity of its leadership has led to our downfall. We can get on the right path, but the longer we wait, the harder it will be. For other people who want to doubt and argue, think of it in these terms. Right now, on a 10-year treasury, our government pays 4.5% interest. Vietnam, whose credit is rated as junk, pays 2.8% interest on their 10-year bond. Think about that. So we're paying a much higher interest rate on our debt than Vietnam, and we're funding all of these wars, right? Like, these people can't borrow the money themselves and buy the weapons from us, right? We're the biggest suckers in the history of the world, okay? Now you can say, well, they need this and they need that. Okay, well, they borrow the money. Why are we borrowing the money? It is the craziest thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. We're borrowing all this money to fund all this stuff around the world. Vietnam isn't doing that. And they got obviously better credit than we do. Since they only have to pay 2.8%, their taxpayers pay way less than the American taxpayer on their debt. Now, that's mind-boggling. You need to talk to your politicians, talk to the media. They don't want to address any of this. It's up to you, the people. If you want to share this, share this. If not, well, when it hits, you're going to be looking for a solution. But the longer this goes on unchecked, the more devastating it's going to be. This is going to be bigger than the Great Depression. It's going to be that bad. But The people are busy playing video games and watching football and having a good time. So we'll see how that all works out. God bless America. Thank you.